I'm Stan Altman. I'm on the faculty at Baruch College. And I'm the director of a project that we refer to as the Baruch College Rubin Museum of Art project. And the intention of the project is only somewhat about the actual museum itself. It's really designed to try to get our students to have experiences during their undergraduate years that get them to think about who they are as people, to begin to think about the questions about who am I, and what is it that I value as an individual, and what is my purpose in the larger scheme of life. In a school like Baruch College, where we're so focused on their traditions of professional development, many of our students who come here as either the first member of their family ever to go to college or as a recent immigrant to the United States, and not surprisingly, they focus very heavily on getting a job and economic stability. But in the course of that narrow lens, that narrow focus, they tend to not be aware that life is much bigger than just getting a job. And depending upon how you choose to see life, you define a reality that may be very narrow or may be very broad. And so part of this project is to help students broaden their sense of conceptual lenses about how big the world is and how much opportunity there actually is, and how much there is to learn from other peoples and other traditions and other cultures. Because in the West, we have a very narrow conception about the way we approach life. It's very analytical, it's very reductionist, and we fragment everything thinking that that's the way to be most productive, by concentrating on a very narrow thing that we can do repetitively. Where in the East, there's a recognition that life is much more impermanent, much more uncertain, much more in flux, and therefore one has to have a much broader sense of openness about life's possibilities. So we run programs here where we take students to the museum and challenge them to use the art as a way of thinking about life in a much broader sense. One of the symbols that are often used as a way of both stimulating thought and a way of getting people to think about moving from the center outward in all of the manifestations of our center, our body, and the external world we live in is the mandala. As you know, when the tsunami happened, it cost this enormous amount of energy to move across the Indian Ocean. And it was only when it finally got to a body of land that it actually converted itself into a tidal wave, which is where all of the destruction happened from. And this one particular morning, this was an article in the Hindu newspaper, this woman and her dog, who every day go down to the shore, get on a ferry to go to the mainland in Chennai, and then at the end of the day get back on the ferry and come back. It's so routine they don't even think about it, although this particular day the dog absolutely refused to get on the ferry. He was sat there barking and screaming at her, and she obviously lost patience with the dog because it made no sense to her. It was a perfectly beautiful day. She picked the dog up, put him on the ferry, and got on in frustration. He jumped off the ferry, ran to the top of the hill, turned around, and started barking his head off. And she, I don't even, there was just a lot of little symbols that appeared in terms of what she said. She went to the top of the hill, and before she could turn around, having picked him up, she heard this splash. And a tidal wave had formed in the time that she had walked to the top of the hill and basically destroyed the entire ferry, and everybody on it was dead. And in her reality, it was a perfectly beautiful day. And in her dog's reality, he could hear the sound because his frequency range is much wider than humans. He could hear the tidal wave in formation because he could hear the tsunami rushing across the surface of the Indian Ocean and knew sooner or later that it was going to hit, and he wanted out of there, and he wasn't prepared to leave her behind. So the whole issue of reality, our whole sense of who we are, our whole sense of what life's purpose is and what our purpose is and how we fit into this is a subject of deep importance to all of us. Because until we begin to come to grips with this question, we live a very partial life. And in fact, we impose on our life constraints that are often unnecessary and don't really exist except in our own minds. So our panel really come from very different walks of life. What we have are individuals who look at the mandala from very different perspectives, whether it's my colleague from Baruch College, Lawrence Kirby, who is a professor in the mathematics department here, whose interest around the mandala is trying to teach students to understand symmetry, both as a concept and what it ultimately means in terms of a representation of energy in other forms. I don't want to speak for Lawrence because I'm sure I'm going to say things that he'll say, I didn't say that. But it's to try to explore the idea, because part of what we're committed to in terms of this Baruch Rubin Museum collaboration is really to think through how we change the curriculum so arts aren't treated as a specialty, but they're treated as part of the essential ways in which we communicate and experience life, and then articulate that experience. To his right is Judith Fleischman. Judith is the staff chaplain at the Hospital for Special Surgery and a member of the Healthcare Chaplaincy, one of our co-sponsors here. And I think, well, I was going to say, but it's, she also happens to be a Zen Buddhist monk, but more important than that, I think the chaplaincy, there's a tendency in the West to think of chaplains as religion, but the chaplaincy is really an organization that attempts to really address people's spiritual needs, primarily in a healthcare setting, but obviously our sense of who we are as spiritual beings transcend the healthcare setting. But I think Judy will give us a sense of how the mandala fits into the work that she does. Many of you who were here earlier have had an opportunity to meet Khenchen Swang Gatso Rinpoche, the Rinpoche was kind enough to help us organize all of this. He is now associated with a Tibetan center up in Binghamton, New York, and brings many of the teachings and spiritual understanding, and in fact gave a lecture earlier this morning about the mandala in terms of its structure and how the process by which it's made, and then how, in fact, it's part of the teachings of self-awareness. And finally, to his right is John Van Alphen, who is the curator at the Rubin Museum of Art, and who I would say without this kind of collaborative partnership, not just in terms of the incredible exhibitions that are done in the museum, but I think the commitment of the museum and its staff to make this work as a transformative experience for thousands of students.
Well, I'm coming from different fields. I mean, I'm Sanskritist on the basis. I translated Natya Shastra as a postgraduate in Bombay, and from there I went into the tribal areas in India. Adivasi, studied their music, and went further on in shamanism and Oriental medicine, and I compared Unani and Ayurveda with Tibetan and Chinese medicine in '97. And well, the field is rather large, but when I was a child, like 4 years old, I think, sometimes summer night, I remember I was dreaming, looking at the sky through a window, and I got afraid. And I got afraid because I thought, where am I here in this? I saw all the stars. Where does it begin and where does it end? And this enormous distances, these ideas made me afraid. And I thought how to comprehend it as a child. I didn't know how to do that. And one of the things I did while working in Belgium in my own museum was working with the Jains. And Jains is a special community, religious community in India. And they are represented in Belgium by the Diamond people. Diamanteers from India are all Jains. They're living in Belgium for a big community. And I made an exhibition for them on their cosmology. And they have something like, the Jambudvipa, which is the center of the cosmic man. And they make a very clear picture of the cosmos and how it looks like and how it should be understood. And then I thought back, if I would have known that, something like that, when I was a child, it would have helped me, because this cosmography of the Jains, the Jambudvipa, the Lokapurusha, the man of the cosmos, it describes in minute details where we are, what is beyond our world, what's beyond the oceans, and so on and so on. And maybe it's not up to date, but it's 2,000 years old, and at least it gave people an idea of how to think about our surrounding cosmos. And it helps of not being afraid, because it gives knowledge of what it is to be surrounded by such an enormous, vast cosmic idea. And even 2,000 years ago, they invented definitions for which we had to wait until the 20th century, like we are reckoning now with a light year to get the distance from here to a star. You can't tell this anymore in kilometers or miles. You have to combine it with time, and the Jains did that already 2,000 years ago. They were counting with Rajus, and Raju is a distance that a god can fly at a tremendous speed. It's all given in numbers, for 6 months, and then you have a Raju. And in that way, they gave an idea of how far the stars are and things like that. So what I meant to say is that these cosmographic plans that were made in India so early, and partly from which the Buddhists are derived. I think the Jains are a bit older and a bit more, primitive is not the right word, but more original, I think, in age. It gives an idea. It gives an idea of where we are, what our place is in the cosmos, and where we might get to, because we have many lives ahead, and it tells you where to get in all these layers of Mount Meru and of the Jambudvipa itself.
In relation with the Zen mandala, and based on the Tibetan Buddhism, that it is something, kind of really very vast and profound, and also there is lots of information and lots of things to really study on. That in relation with the, kind of like a Buddhist philosophy, and then the whole, just arts in relation with these, kind of mandala training, and besides that, so many of, kind of rituals and practices. However, the in the mandala, which is, it is a Sanskrit word, I think it has been already become just very common in the West too. But however, it is where it explains, like a mandala in Tibetan is called, kind of kilgor. So which means there is kil means center, and kor is like a retinue. So there are just kind of like a practice of the deity through the visualization, where there is the external, what is called the celestial palace, and then internal the, kind of all the assemblage of, kind of deity. where there are the principal deity and then the kind of retinue deities. So according to that, then the mandala in which where one do all these kind of practices, or where it just happens, the gatherings of those kind of practices, in a way just what is meant by like celestial palace means like a just in one way this kind of deities like a house, and then where just all the deities kind of represent. In mandala there are what is called just that kind of first ready kingur, which is meant by kind of drawing just as a art. As some of you might have seen in the beginning, where there is a drawing, and with that drawing it has based on each and every individual assemblage of deity or whichever that the mandala it is, there are kind of like specific kind of like measurements, that whether it is kind of like a single deity like Avalokiteshvara just in the sixth realm, that which we did maybe 2007 or kind of like here in Rupan Museum, just a kind of vision show similar like that, or maybe like kind of 5 deities or maybe like 100 deities. So according to that, as a part of the art, it has kind of specific measurement of its kind of existence of the center, where there should be the seat level of the principal deity, which is like mostly in Tibetan called Hung, and then Hung, and then according to that there are just kind of circles where in relation with this it is of the 100 deities kind of mandala. So in this way, they go through all the measurement, kind of the just drawing, and in a kind of complete assemblage of those kind of deity. That is one kind, and then second is what is called Tuzingi Chingur. So that what means kind of this Sen mandala, and then there are high level of kind of mandala performance, which is called Sungyin Tingdingi Chingur. So it is like a more illusory way of kind of going through visualization of the deity mandala. Those who have great meditation experience, as Sten spoke about maybe 2 questions: who we are and what is our purpose. So based on that, in one way I explained earlier who we are in the relative world, and also who we are in our absolute world or absolute reality. So that what it is all anyway just kind of based on kind of truth. Then on the other hand, like where we go through this explanation of this our earth, as our professor said about this cosmology, and like Jambudvip and Mount Meru, that which is kind of what it has been explained in Hinduism, like in the Hinduism there are 5 major Tirthankaras, means kind of 5 major schools, and one of the earliest one, which is known as Samkhya schools, that which even just existing before Shakyamuni Buddha came on this earth. So according to that have kind of whole complete explanation, which is somehow kind of most of their concept in relation with the explanation is very close to kind of Buddhism. And then of course later when Buddha just kind of came into existence, then he have the whole complete explanation of this whole complete universe, that in one way where it explains that there are 3,000 mirrors of the world, which means like 100 million worlds are existing within this kind of universe. So from that point of view, it is not like this our earth is not just only one in the, cosmology, there are 100 million, worlds are existing, that which is possible to understand through a enlightened mind point of view. But as a, kind of ordinary mind, how it is just so limited in so many ways, we just only see our Earth and then the 9 planets and so forth, maybe a little bit more we may just kind of discover. So that what it is kind of like external existence of this our planet or world, and that which in a way it is just the projection or the production of each and every beings that who are born here, which in Buddhism, which is called like a collective karmic projection. So how collective beings that create certain kind of just action, that which is close to what is called energy. For example, like whole bunch of us kind of concentrate into something very positive based on the peace of the world, and just generate compassion, loving kindness, and then try to just focus on that, and then view on that, and then do specific spiritual kind of practice, that it creates a very positive energy that which can be very powerful to spread out, and that which can also possible to every beings may sense it, and that which helps to experience certain level of kind of experiences, positive experiences. So similar like that, how this world is, and that the external universe or the galaxy or the planets are not necessarily a kind of inherent existence. It is all production of like the living beings that within the kind of universe. So then all beings that are just kind of who we are, relatively we are who we are now, and then it goes through kind of cycles of life. It doesn't really depend upon whether you believe or not. It depends upon what is the truth and what is the reality. Just everything what we have to face is the reality, relative reality. This existence of relative reality, nobody can just change just because of their belief, just because of their concept, just because of their philosophy, just because of their understanding, just because of their culture, cannot change that reality. So that reality have to be based on its kind of every kind of reality of that what, how we are living in this world, and how each and every individual beings are experiencing, whatever it is called, happiness and suffering, and what we are, and what is our purpose of life, and how we just kind of like in a relative way, how we all try to educate, in this so many fields. Each and every individual try to educate in so many fields, and that which you try to just bring back into together, that where we can come some sorts of conclusion to the truth, including the whole complete existence of the religion and faith and the practices, and where it can come to a common understanding in a way like a human value. How we understand the human value, how we understand the kind of values in relation with all these living beings, and that what it is another just kind of like our just who we are, and based on that how we try to just try to take care of each other, like based on how much we train with our mind a sense of kind of compassion, sense of loving kindness, a sense of caring all other being, that how just taking as oneself as an example, when just other peoples are kind and loving and nice to you, one enjoy that, and one understand that, one feels that, and one appreciate that. And in that same way, if we train ourselves to initiate to be just kind of send out that message to be kind, loving and caring, rather than just kind of getting into any sorts of kind of afflictive emotions and discriminating with the kind of culture or belief or language, that which is just kind of like a separate. And when we feel as kind of like one community and to perceive in that way, that is what I think as purpose of one's life, what we can do to bring that kind of just peace on the earth, as we all look for peace and happiness. But how we can just really achieve that peace and happiness is when we just kind of like bring everybody together to live in a very harmonious way, to kind of, exchange our knowledge and feelings, and then understanding at the same time how we can just kind of like digest into kind of oneself, and that way just where we feel that kind of like our purpose of life in a relative way. But of course then from the Buddhist point of view, then as I explained earlier, even in relation with this kind of Zen mandala, that which is a kind of like a whole deity family, and within that just to perceive everything as a deity nature, where you cultivate what is called pure perception. And when you develop that pure perception in relation with all this being as like our divine nature. So divine nature is been explained in almost all religion. And but somehow the practice of divine nature and to view as a divine nature and to just kind of maintain as a divine nature, that sort of divine nature which is within every being, is been not maintained that much, where it is got kind of that individualistic, become more like sectarian, and that is all just the conceptual mind. So that the conceptual mind, how it discriminates and how it distinguishes and how it falls into like kind of partiality. So that what it is not purpose of our life, and that is not our just kind of who we are and what we are. That is that the truth that how oneself is feeling and how oneself could know about what is called divine nature, or in Buddhism we say our kind of primordial pure nature. And that's also primordial pure nature also can be trained and practiced and go through all this meditation, and one can also completely enlightened and get perfected, and through which you could kind of like see everything is pure, just as it is, according to that kind of ultimate truth or the absolute truth. For example, like Shakyamuni Buddha, once he attained enlightenment, he see everything as just pure as it is. And that what it is our ultimate purpose, and that what it is our ultimate who we are in our absolute reality, which is kind of something just completely different from this our relative kind of appearance. So this present relative appearance and existence and so forth is more or less like a movie theater. Each and every individual have a role in this relative world, and to just go through all sorts of experiences. But in our primordial pure nature, then it is just kind of like one truth. That I used to use the example with the Matrix. The first movie of the Matrix. In the very beginning, there is kind of those two pills. Whether you want to be just as it is, or you want to go through all sorts of process of the illusion. So in our highest, the tantric teachings, that where it explains, all the samsara or nirvana that they come from one source, from one, kind of seed, like I think, kind of like a physics, where they have similar kind of like a explanation, and science also going through all sorts of experiments, getting to that beyond the atoms and molecules, I think, just which is leading to, kind of emptiness. So that emptiness, that primordial nature is source of, everything, and that what it is, our primordial, pure, ultimate home, from where we just come out, and how long we have been got lost, and now how we can return back to our pure, kind of home, where everything is just, kind of what is called pure consciousness. And that's what I think as our purpose to how we can discover that, and that what it is purpose of our life, and also that what it is our, kind of pure nature it is.
The hospital for special surgery, where I work as what's called a clinical or professional healthcare chaplain. And people often ask, what does a chaplain do? Or, I'm not dying, do I really need a chaplain? And I like to say that what we do is this. We support patients, their families, and staff in activating what they value, what we value, as a direct experience of spirituality as each person defines it. Well, that question of what is spirituality, just like the question of what is the mandala, a lot of conversation around that. So a few years ago, in 2009, about 50 people from many different disciplines got together in what was called a consensus conference. And they came up after a number of days with a consensus definition of spirituality. And it says, spirituality is the dynamic dimension of human life that relates to the way persons experience, express, and or seek meaning, purpose, and transcendence, and the way they connect to the moment, to self, to others, to nature, to the significant, and or the sacred. What's the upshot of all that? The upshot of all that is that we are all spiritual beings, and we all express that differently. Our diversity shapes the whole spectrum of who we are. And wholeness is the essence of mandala. So is diversity. They're interdependent. What matters is what you're hearing right now. What matters is what you're seeing right now. What matters is every sense experience that we're that's happening for each of us uniquely right now, and at the same time, all of us together. That's what's important. And a chaplain, if a person wants to, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience that in the moment that it's happening under sometimes the most challenging circumstances that a person can face. To be awake, to be present, to be open-hearted, and to be trained and able to reflect meaning in a way that a person can integrate and experience as being whole in the moment, in relationship with everyone and everything that's happening, changes everything, as it's changing it right now. Are we awake to that? And how do we activate that together? This is also the essence of mandala. Now, in healthcare, we often speak of patient-centered care. meaning the patient's experience defines healing. That's a paradigm shift. That also is mandala, constantly shifting, and yet centered. There's a symmetry there. Now, this is happening in our culture, too, and chaplains offer a unique vantage point for this, offer a unique opportunity for healing. Healing is to be whole. It's both a process and a product, if you will. They're inseparable. Now, when I experience myself as whole, I might enter that, you might say enter the mandala with where I'm at right now. It could be ugly, it could be mean, it could be indifferent. You ever felt numb, overwhelmed, underwhelmed? It's okay. It's where we are right now, maybe. Or maybe I might be feeling euphoric. I look into that mandala, I hear the sounds, I'm amazed. The colors so bright that it can seem, some people say surreal, extraordinary, which is a marvelous word, I think. Wonderful. And there can be actually a quality of euphoria to it. It becomes so special that in a way I've checked out of the experience. So what is wholeness if it's entering through those points and then broadening? When we sense the whole, when we're intimate actually with what we're experiencing instead of resisting it, and supports are helpful for that, then something amazing happens, because in that moment, all of a sudden what's activated? My sense of purpose, my sense of aliveness, my sense of belonging, and of this word, to care, of caring. What does it mean really to care? Well, my Zen teacher, Roshi Enkyo O'Hara, spiritual director of the village Zendo, just downtown a bit in Soho, she encouraged me recently to take care of your wonder. So just imagine that for a moment. How right now are you taking care of your wonder? What activates it? She speaks of to care as stewardship. How are we caring for? And you can start wherever you want. For myself, for my family, for my livelihood, my place of livelihood, the people I work with, the people I ride the subway with, this city, this country, maybe a country I was born in, come here from, this planet, and so on. I like to say we live in a world of wonder. And what makes this a wonderful world are all the people who care, who are stewards of something, of someone, some passion, some vision that's larger than our small selves. You can't make a mandala out of one sand, one grain of sand, or one color, or one utensil, or with one monk. It's got to come together. It's also got to come together with our intention, because it's also a practice of showing up, caring. It's very concrete, actually, and it's very specific. So in healthcare, when we speak of patient-centered care, something we speak a lot about in the healthcare chaplaincy, the wholeness of life, that wholeness equals the healing, so to speak. That's the equation, moment by moment and breath by breath. This is our life. This is the meaning of mandala. Healing mind, body, spirit as one. Healing myself and others as one. How do I do that? How do I care? This is each of our journeys and our journey together. That's where the fun begins. It's ceaseless. It's wonderful. And each and every one of us, for all the causes and conditions of our lives, have arrived here in this moment to be here together with this shared intention. I encourage each of us to activate our unique experiences of wholeness, of well-being, of being well, as we continue to build this mandala, because we are building it actually together.
When the Baruch Rubin project sent around this opportunity or challenge to integrate the Rubin Museum into my teaching, I looked at what's there, and of course the mandalas immediately drew me, and they are, particularly this sand mandala here, is almost pure geometry and color. And so that drew me, and I realized that beyond that, it manifests the mathematics of symmetry. And clearly, when you look at it, you can see it's the same as its mirror image, but mathematically, symmetry has a more general meaning. For example, this here has the property that if you rotate the whole thing through 90 degrees, through 1/4 turn, it looks the same, right? So the colors have shifted, but the structure is the same, and that is a rotational symmetry, mathematically speaking. So there are different classes of symmetry, and you can classify symmetries. Symmetry is one subject I teach in. I specialize in teaching mathematics to liberal arts students, and symmetry is one topic that we look at the beginnings of. It's about beauty, of course. It has applications in, for example, sciences such as crystallography and cosmology, because interestingly, the mandala, you said it was Jan, a picture of the cosmos, or like a map, maybe, perhaps. And cosmologists these days look at the laws of our cosmos in terms of the mathematics or symmetry, of symmetries of the universe. So it's the connections with that. But then I realized there's another way, of course, of looking at this, which we also do, which is not what it brings to our own mind, but what's in the mind of the people who are making it, and it's embedding in a particular cultural tradition. And I also teach history of mathematics, and I began to see other mathematical questions here. For example, from other works I saw at the Rubin Museum, rather than this mandala in particular, you can trace both Chinese influences and influences from the Indian subcontinent, and that seems to reflect what's true of not just mathematically, but of the objects on display at the Rubin Museum. So, in fact, that's one of the themes of the exhibit. There is the melding of cultures, and we can see that happening in the mathematics of these devotional objects. So it's very striking to me. There are these links. I only just beginning this semester to actually put my ideas into test with live students. So I'm looking forward to making that voyage of discovery with them.
There's a scholar and researcher and now who's become a friend by the name of Stephen Posts, who runs the Center for Bioethics at the State University of New York at Stony Brook in their Health Science Center. And he's done a lot of work around the whole impact of love. And one of the things we've been able to learn from science is the way different kind of experiences and emotions activate the brain. And so one of the pieces that he wrote years ago talks about when we are angry and when we're frustrated, very often what the Tibetans call afflicted emotions. But when we have all of that kind of heat, it activates one part of our brain. On the other hand, when we do something to help somebody else out of a sense of compassion, out of a sense of love, it activates a completely different part of our brain. And the interesting part is both parts of the brain can't be activated at the same time. So one of the benefits of helping and serving other people is it doesn't allow you to get to this space where you have all of these conflicted emotions of jealousy, possession, anger, because you're too busy emoting positive feelings as opposed to getting caught up in some of this negative feelings, which are then embodied by the wrathful deities that we see in the art in terms of the positive and negative, the peace-loving and the angry deities that are symbolized in the art. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I'm trying to find some peace and serenity from a very tumultuous background, a military veteran. I recently got trained in transcendental meditation. I've been exercising that for the last couple of weeks. But you mentioned something about inside of you, what's inside of you, and try to let it out. Could you please, I didn't catch that, but I found that very profound, especially for me in my life at this moment. Could you kind of like go back and elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah. I like to keep things simple. And as chaplains, our charge is always to reflect, to hear and reflect like a clear mirror what's true for you right now, so that you experience yourself as whole. And a lot of times we talk about what's broken in ourselves, in our culture, in our families. What would it be like right now to tap into being whole and the wholeness of life, which includes pain, but that pain speaks to something that's important. It points to what you and I, what each of us values, what's really up, what's really important right now. So much so that the question needs to be voiced. So first of all, I would invite you just to notice where in your body, and each of us can do this. I'm experiencing that importance right now. For me, it's right here. It often is. And often right here in my gut, and the conversation that's happening between those, and how it spreads out. And then just notice your next in-breath. As simple as that. It's a fresh and new breath. It really is. It's the breath of life. And as you breathe in, ask yourself, what keeps me going right now? And notice where you feel that, where you feel the juice. And as you breathe out, what's important right now?
Anytime I'm on this campus, this is my sanctuary. I love being here. I was just telling a good friend of mine that every time I leave, I get sad. But here, I feel like I'm part of a big culture. And then I'm in an event like this today that is like meeting me where I am in my life right now. And I feel a lot of joy and a lot of love, you know.
Sometimes it's important to voice it. And I thank you for doing that for all of us today.
Thank you very much.
I was actually born in Tibet and raised up in Tibet. And I came here in 2006. And after, start from 2008, there are so many self-immolations. And right now, it's probably like 53% already self-immolated themselves just for Tibet. In this kind of situation, I've been through family. I've been to a community where it teaches peace, how to be thinking about this interdependent concept and everything. But in this kind of situation, it's really hard to be still, come down and think about peace and everything. So I just want to ask the panelists, how should I get into peace mind when this kind of situation pops up?
Well, I'm in a situation where there's potential contamination from a fire that took place upstate New York. So the idea of finding your center and dealing with it from a peaceful place doesn't mean that you deal with it from a passive place. It doesn't mean that people who are involved to try to protect the people who might be affected if the groundwater has been contaminated by PCBs and other kind of poisons mean that they sit around. It means that in order to be effective, I've got to empower other people to help us. And I have to find the true way to express my ideas. I can't do it out of anger because I'll turn people off. I can't just give up because then I'll turn myself off. So there's finding this kind of center for yourself where you move from. It's kind of like in the martial arts. You have to find your balance point in order to be able to use other people's energy. So I think part of the human nature is we can be terrible with each other. I think that's the part we talk about the wrathful deities pieces. We can do great damage in terms of the way in which we treat each other. I mean, and it goes back to the way before the Second World War and the Holocaust with the Jews and all of the stuff we read about in the newspapers of how people treat each other. Unless we begin to find ways to cooperate as a community of people around the world, we can do great destruction. But as the Dalai Lama said, you have to start from a peaceful place, and you have to be a symbol to convince other people that they need to join you. At the same time, you need to fight for kind of equality. And they may sound like contradictions, but I don't think they're. I think it's this continuing yin-yang principle of, on the one hand, you have to find your center and your peace. On the other hand, it doesn't mean you become passive. It means you fight for the things you believe in without necessarily fighting, meaning it in a physical sense. Sometimes you fight with intention, you fight with thought, you fight with word, and you fight with things that you are able to convince other people to believe as you do about what's right. those of you who've stayed most of the day have experienced, I think as I have, the sense of the energy that's been shared here. So on behalf of Baruch College, I want to thank you because I think we need all the energy we can get for imparting on all of our thousands of students that come here every day.